You are listening to the Overwatch League Network, the podcast with Deadeye on all the Overwatch League news and information. The show with Tactical Visor on the statistics and analysis. Here are your hosts, Totally Drunk, Spider, and Slambo.
What is up, guys, and welcome back to Overwatch League Network, the podcast with Deadeye on all the latest Overwatch League news, information, and esports analysis. I am your host, Totally Drunk, and tonight on episode 56, we're going to go around the league discussing the latest Overwatch League news. We got some more contenders call-ups, some more expansion team brand unveilings, a little bit of drama out of a certain popular streamer turned Overwatch League Pro, which we'll get into, all of that and so much more. But before we can get into the news and introduce you to my co-host, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who is hanging out with us for our live show tonight over on Twitch, and of course thank all of our repeat listeners. Of course, as always, I have someone here with me tonight to help break everything down, and with that being said, guys, I have to say this, you don't need to adjust your monitors or your TV sets, or, your earbuds, anything like that. That is, in fact, my hashtag soulmate Slambo here with us tonight. My mission to drag him out of the abyss while I was in Vegas this past week was a success. Slambo, it's great to have you back, brother. How have you been?
What's up, nerd? It is good to be back. You notice the nerd is singular there. That's only for you, Totem, buddy, because you're right. You pulled me out of the abyss. You drug me from the dark depths of nowhere that I was, and you've brought me back to life. No, I'm super happy to be back. I don't know what you've shared really, but basically there's just some good transitions going on in my life outside the show. It took some time to kind of become level and find some homeostasis, and I think we're there. That's why I'm back. Of course, it doesn't mean I'm going to have maybe 100% attendance record as I've never had, but, I absolutely am so excited to be coming back consistently onto the show. I know that there's probably people on the show who have never listened to me talk before that are like, who is this guy that have been listening just for weeks? I don't know who this is. So I hope to prove myself. Now, let's just set the bar low, Totem. This episode in my return, very low expectations, folks. It's not going to go well. But please keep tuning in and things are going to get better. No, I think we're going to have a good show, man. We got a lot to talk about. It's a fun week for me to come back just with a few topics I can't wait to weigh in on. So,
absolutely. And, we both kind of missed last week because, you were in Atlanta, which we'll get into a little bit later when we talk about a certain situation with that team.
A little bit.
And that kind of lined up coincidentally again. I mean, I'm just saying. But, Spider last week held down the fort while I took the week off since I was in Vegas. And unfortunately, he's not here with us tonight. He will be back next week, though. And I'm looking forward to talking to him again about, kind of whatever other news we'll have. Maybe we'll have a couple more franchise reveals going into the next week, because it seems like we're getting a steady flow of news, and this week was no exception. So let's go ahead and jump right into it as we go around the league. So first up, we gotta talk about the viewership for the Overwatch World Cup. We do have statistics for the viewership compared to the prior 2 years of the Overwatch World Cup. And, the numbers this year are a little bit skewered, primarily due to the fact that, we did have the launch of the World Cup viewer. So, of course, that had to have taken, some effect on, the amount of people that were just tuning into the Twitch stream. We do know that the airtime was the least of the 3 years that the World Cup has been held, at 17 hours altogether. They did see a peak viewership of 251,000, roughly, which, was a decrease compared to last year of 71,000. But that being said, Slambo, we had the World Cup viewer, we had our, basically follow whoever you want in its own separate client. How much do you feel like that impacted the Twitch viewership numbers?
it made a dent. I think it had to make a difference, but I think there's only a certain amount of people that really were looking for that extra experience. It's probably a lower percentage compared to the Twitch audience. So I think conservatively, it's 100,000 people, 50,000 people is my brain. And again, that's not at one peak moment. That's over the course of the day, probably singular day. And then, kind of tuning in and out throughout the matches that matter to them. But I think that anchors and tethers to like the biggest point to me, which is exceeding of all that, was just the matchups. We just didn't have. Unfortunately, we do need the United States to do something of some presence, get further in the tournament, create a little bit more of that conversation from friend to friend, of reminding their Overwatch friends who haven't watched the game in maybe months or weeks, hey, the USA is going up against South Korea in the semifinals. I think it was missing some of those matchups. Again, that's a very selfish point of view where I'm at. I was excited about a couple of things as they end up panning out, and it ended up being good for me. But I think again, just for that wildfire spreading, where I basically the meter for me, Totem, in a weird way, is my brother-in-law. If he is like interested in watching it, he's someone who is fine with Overwatch esports when the stakes are high, but he's not going to watch just like the mundane stuff. Mm-hmm. And he just was not engaged this time. So again, that's like my barometer, if you will. So just kind of go back to what I was really getting at is that, yes, that made an impact, but I think it was just the matchups and the USA's lack of presence that personally lost some of the numbers in 2018. So I think if you put all that together, we still probably had about the same as we had last year, or even a little bit of growth, I would assume. But I think there's probably an expectation that they do a little better than that really the World Cup should have been probably, on par with some of the other benchmarks they've set this year with Overwatch League. And unfortunately, just, I don't know, something just fell short. Am I being too tough, man? Am I being too hard on it?
No, I feel like this is all going to be dependent on, one, like how people are actually using the World Cup viewer. Because, I know some people are probably using it like that exclusively and like not paying attention to the Twitch. Other people would have used it more as like a second screen experience, kind of like, the all access pass, but, just being able to swap to whatever point of view that you want and then still having the Twitch stream up. But like, I feel like the people that were only viewing via the World Cup viewer was a very small number. Like, I don't even think it would be tens of thousands, if I'm being completely honest. Yeah. But yeah, I definitely feel like the fact that, some of the marquee matches did not occur, because, US did have an early exit, much to the dismay of everyone, or at least most people anyway. So, we didn't get to see that showdown between South Korea and the United States team. And, a lot of that was just due to the fact that the communication just kind of shut down. I mean, they made some substitutions, and I know a lot of people were giving Zachary flack, and I feel like as a whole, it was just a big letdown overall. But for me, like, I was okay with the viewership that we got, but not having, like, what we would perceive to be the final, like, kind of like what we had last year with South Korea and the United States, definitely took a lot of the interest out from the viewers at home. Because, like, really, like, at the end of the day, yes, China comes in with great numbers, but, like, you always have to, like, put air quotes around it because they are skewered quite a bit, which did show, again, in the numbers. So China once again inflated the numbers, given the gold medal matched the highest peak viewers out of any World Cup.
But I'm ignoring those numbers. Like, I looked completely at the Twitch number because I feel like, to your point, I just can't. It's just not trustworthy.
Yeah, it's like, oh, there's a million that's over 2. There's like a number over 2 million. Yeah. I don't buy it. But we do know, like, if we don't like factor in the Chinese viewership, it was Canada versus France that brought in the most viewers at 264,000. Now, with the United States team out, of course, that kind of brought, people that were cheering for US to Canada, essentially. Like, well, okay, I guess this is my other horse, in the race. So, we'll just follow and see how Canada does. And we saw how that kind of unfolded. But, like, I thought it was interesting that, we did see such a drop between, like, what we were getting from the Overwatch League and then going into the World Cup. And, I feel like a lot of that, I mean, even looking back at, the Overwatch League playoffs, like, I still have a huge gripe with the marketing of esports on Blizzard's behalf, because, like, there's been so many times where, you ask someone, like, especially leading into the Overwatch League playoffs, like, oh, those are starting? Like, people didn't know about the playoffs. They didn't really know, in some retrospect, like, when the World Cup was, or when the qualifiers were starting, or what days they were. And, they just haven't been given the esports the visibility that they really need to help flourish, because, like, I mean, I wasn't home, so I don't know if it was even in the launcher. Maybe someone in chat can tell me if that was the case or not. But, like, there's still ways that Blizzard can help push their esports just to make sure that people know that this stuff is going down. Because if people don't know about it, I mean, they really don't have a way to tune into said events.
Like it's the exact audience I'm referring to in my brother-in-law that didn't get the message, didn't even really know it was going on, forgot it was a part of BlizzCon.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's a detriment to what they're trying to do. And my first reaction is funny when you were like, "Oh, the marketing." I'm like, "What marketing?" And I didn't have the launcher open, and I wasn't able to, but I didn't really even see anything else. But again, like, I'm paying attention. I follow both subreddits. I'm a bit of a different audience. My friends that would be willing to watch the World Cup need to find out about it through different methods. So anyway, that's another can of worms. But yeah, they're definitely missing the mark, and they're kind of notorious for doing this across all their esports. And it's a weird decision, but I don't know. I'm just like trying to rationalize it in my head right now. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know. There's got to be something we're missing, Totem. We don't understand about the way they do things, but it's a grassroots campaign, Totem. That's what it is. It's grassroots. We don't do advertising. We just let it grow naturally. What do you think? Is that the plan?
I mean, it could be, but, like, it's not necessarily the way
Being
they do things. It's the way that they don't do things,
that's fair.
Which is more of the issue.
Right.
But anyways,
whatever way you want to peel that. Yeah.
I mean, it can go either way. But anyways, guys, we do have a couple of roster updates that we need to talk about. And this one comes straight from the spreadsheet.
Straight from the spreadsheet.
I mean, this had been long rumored, which we talked
whole
about.
Careers launched off a spreadsheet.
Yeah, pretty much. So we look at the Dallas Fuel, the dumpster fire, the team that is looking to continue their momentum after their improvements in Stage 4 Season 1. We have RCK joining the Dallas Fuel, so another 3-letter player joining. So they have that going for them. I'm not going to read too much into that because realistically, there's maybe like 3 or 4 other players that they could potentially, bring onto the roster that would still fit that. But when you factor in like what pieces of the puzzle they're still missing on that team, they don't necessarily fit per se. But RCK, he began his career back last year when he started as a DPS player for ENCE Esports. That was one of the Finnish esports squads who were basically like always playing second fiddle to the powerhouse in that country, that being Team Giganti. Well, RCK would later go on to join Giganti in 2018, and this was during their rebuild phase after Giganti basically got picked apart for the first season of the Overwatch League. And it was Davin, like, the only person still left on that roster, and then, Giganti's just like, you know what? We'll just pull the talent from ENCE Esports, and we'll just start fresh. And they still had some pretty good success, even with a rebuilt roster. Now, with that being said, with RCK on that lineup, Giganti finished in the top 4 in both Contenders Europe Season 1 and Season 2. And this is a player who, when he was on Gigante, was on the off-tank role, primarily playing D.Va, which, if you saw the roster reveal for RCK, that was basically all the highlights you got outside of, some of the Genji play from 2017. But this signing in particular does bring the field roster up to 9 players in total, and this is the second signing that the field have had in the offseason. The other being the former London Spitfire player, Closer. So, what do we know outside of this? Well, Hastro did comment that the staff is still looking to sign one more player before the start of the second season. And, when you kind of look at the landscape for Dallas right now, they're still kind of missing that projectile DPS player. And yes, RCK has played it in the past, but when you look at some of the inconsistencies that Mickey did have in Season 1, it's really hard to kind of put RCK into that role of being a projectile DPS player when there have been a number of issues on that tank lineup for the fuel.
I'm kind of torn here on feeling. Okay, honestly, I know you're right. Right, you're right that he's brought on to really, I think, play D.Va, to be the D.Va player on this roster. I don't think he's here to be the projectile DPS player, but I'm torn from feeling like that makes sense to me because, to your point, we love Mickey and we kind of give him a pass sometimes on the tape. So like when you're watching the tape or when there's mistakes made, there's almost like a sense that you're like, it's cool. Oh, Mickey. I mean, not that literally, but to like, a passive extent. And then that's the part of me that gets it, and okay, that's fine. And then there's the other half of me that just loves Mickey and doesn't want to see him get any less playtime. And there's also a concern on that half of me that feels like Mickey brings that untangible element we've always talked about, that positivity, that sense of, rah that the team can really build on and use in certain moments. Again, then we go back again to the logical side. I mean, we're like, did that really matter? Like, he was always there all that year, and like we call them dumpster fire. They were kind of a mess until season 4. They got some things ironed out.
Stage 4.
So go ahead. But I just mean, okay, I guess I'll just kind of sum it up here real fast and just say that again, it's like the logical side of me thinks this is a good move for RCK to play a lot of D.Va. Maybe give Mickey a spark. Maybe teach him some new things he misses on being on the defensive side of D.Va. And then at the same time, again, my emotional side says, no, Mickey, no, you so fine. All right, I'm done. All right, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, you said season 4, so, people have to take a shot. Bringing it back. But yeah, like, when I look at the sign-in, like, yes, there were definitely times in season 1 where we gave Mickey a pass, and that was primarily due to the fact that they had this revolving door of tanks on that line, right? We had the tank move, we had X2C, you had OG coming in, who, at the start was a little bit rocky, and it's just like, there were times where Mickey was having to like choose between, okay, like what line am I helping? Like, am I trying to protect Taimu when he's playing Winston? Am I trying to protect the backline when they're getting harassed? When AKM is basically one tricking at the time, but it just seems like when you look at the grand scheme of things, at the off-tank players in the league, Mickey does tend to fall lower and lower on that list. But for me, like, what got me about this signing was, well, you look at Team Envy, their affiliate team, and it kind of just shuts the door on McGravy, because, like, Edinar and I were pretty confident that McGravy was going to get the call-up to fill that D.Va role, and they went a different direction. They went outside of their organization to sign their second Finnish player on this roster, the other one obviously being Taimu. But, like, this isn't the end of the road for Mickey. He did show a lot of promise on Brigitte, especially in Stage 4 when Dallas Fuel was running Brigitte a lot more than a lot of the other teams. But I feel like right now, when it comes to that tank role, if you're Mickey, like, you want to be working on, your Zarya or maybe even your Roadhog a bit. That way, you might be able to ease your way into more playing situations on the field roster. But for now, like I feel like RCK will get the nod over Mickey as the starting off tank on that lineup.
Yeah, and I mean, even if Mickey's losing kind of that starting diva, off tank role, I do feel like he'll maintain his role on the team. He'll still kind of be there on the sidelines. He'll still be supporting his teammates. He'll be in practice, trying new things, doing new things. To your point, I totally agree. I feel like he's got the right personality to be kind of benched, if that's also a thing. Like Mickey, if anybody is going to figure out a way to make the best out of that situation and then really focus in on areas where he can improve and he can still help the team. So Dallas Fuel has a great person in Mickey on their team, and I think they know that. So making a move like this sometimes can have like volatile reactions or cause toxicity
No
within the
blocked.
roster, but I feel like not the case here. What'd you say? Who'd you say?
I said cough cough numlocked because that would be the
Oh
first thing
God,
that would come to
numlocked.
mind.
Oh, I would definitely numlocked. And
Mm.
yeah, he couldn't even hold it in for like a whole season. He got to like what, like season 3, and these videos of his Twitch just started leaking of him like this is not a great team. It's not a great team. Just going all mad. I'm sorry, that was a bad impression.
People need to
He's
take another shot. But yeah, like
Anyway.
he's back in contenders at this point. But anyways, moving on, let's talk a little bit about the Shanghai Dragons, who, as we have talked about, are kind of in that restructuring phase. It was basically out with a lot of the old and in with the new, and this goes along with their Korean forefront yet again. So they have made another addition to their coaching staff, and they have turned to former Element Mystic head coach Levi. And, he is going to be serving as the assistant coach for the team. And this is a former pro player turned coach who led Element Mystic to the Apex Challenger Season 5 title. And, this was kind of like before the Path to Pro got, like, put into place. So Challengers was kind of like if we're comparing the equivalent to current times, would be like the open division, and then you would move on to Apex, which is currently, contenders. But anyways, so he'll be working under head coach Blue Hass, who was the coach for Kondu Panthera, runner-ups in Contenders Korea last season, to our boys in Runaway, who, I know we're anxious to see, Vancouver's unveiling in a couple of weeks, and, we do have a new Runaway roster for Contenders, and, Creed is also on this roster. But, you look at some of the teams that have been getting poached for, this current offseason, going into Season 2. Kondu Panthera was definitely at the top of that list. Runaway was at the top of the list, and a lot of the pieces of Element Mystic were also part of that puzzle. And, Sembo, I know you tune into Korea, and, Element Mystic is a name that I know you're going to be familiar with, but maybe haven't been maybe as up to date on. But what do you think it is about Element Mystic in particular that made them so approachable to these teams to, sign some of their players and coaches?
I mean, maybe I think it's kind of a marriage between the region and what Element Mystic represented in Apex early on. And I still think, I'm sorry, and what I mean by represented was that willingness to do things that were a little outside the box, the willingness to try some compositions that weren't traditional, and the willingness to kind of play a style that suited your team. Now, the reason I say that the marriage, I think China as a region has always been kind of a unique brand of Overwatch, if you will. They've always kind of had a weird style in China. So I think we were kind of excited about going into the World Cup, if you remember.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like that, with a combination of Element Mystic's reputation to do some creative things early on, kind of became their brand in a way. Now, again, to your point, been disconnected for a while. But I mean, I remember the early days where there was a strat where you could May wall on Dorado and get the whole team up on a rooftop. And it was just the thought of just being able to confidently play with a May in that cool. The wall trick is nice, but then they found like good ways to use May it throughout combat and everything. So I don't know. I don't know if they maintained that same thing, but I think that was the reputation that I always remembered from Element Mystic. And so I think that China is like, oh, let's definitely embrace a coach from a culture that's willing to do that as well.
Yeah, like back when that was happening, that was when like Meta Athena was doing a lot of like the tech threads as well, and Element Mystic has kind of been like this Korean team who, for a while, ever since that season in Apex Challengers, was like, I'm not gonna say diamond in the rough. There was more like of an up and coming team. There was a lot of talent there, a lot of young talent, and this was a team
Totem. I totally messed that up. Yes, you're right. That was Meta Athena. I'm thinking about Element Mystic was like second generation they came up. Oh my god. All right. You know what?
it's
I'm
okay.
gonna call myself out, Totem.
I am breeding
I
it
know you
back.
are, but you were gonna be nice about it. And I told these people at home that it was gonna be bad, the expectations would be low. And listen, I'm gonna own it. I'm gonna own that mistake. So anyway, thank you very much. Continue forward.
But anyways, so Element Mystic was this young team that was going toe to toe with, the Lunatic Highs, the Call of Duty Pantheras, and they were beating them pretty consistently. But as those teams got more seasoned, especially with like Call of Duty Panthera, that's when we started to see Element Mystic kind of like slide a little bit in regards to their performance. But that being said, I wouldn't consider it as like a sharp decline, kind of like what we saw with Seven, who was another one of those Open Division teams that was making some pretty big waves. But like there was just a level of consistency out of Element Mystic, and the mechanical skill of the individual players was really what made them stand out against, some of the other Korean teams, which, isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do, considering that region has the most talent. And, yes, part of that is due to the fact that just the culture there and how seriously they take esports, but also, you got to factor in how many teams there are in their Open Division and in their path to pro. And then you can compare that to the rest of the world and just the LAN environment that they are in, as opposed to, online qualifiers and things like that. Like, there's a reason why a lot of the off-season sign-ins are coming out of Korea. Because they're, I don't want to say like they're bred for success, but they have the tools like at the ready, like from the get-go essentially. Whereas like say contenders in North America or Europe, you're probably not seeing any sort of like LAN play until like finals basically, and then that's pretty much it. Like you can't really substitute skill over actual LAN experience all the time. Yes, it can work out in some cases, but you also have cases where people do really great online, and then when it comes to playing on LAN, kind of just don't have that same sort of impact in the game.
No, and I mean, at the end of the day, like something we've always said from the beginning of this show was iron sharpens iron. You know what I mean? It's just if you put yourself into those more intense environments, what comes out is just a better product. So, man, I do remember that when Element Mystic was coming on the scene, how young that roster was. I mean, it's just been like probably a year and a half ago, but it wasn't that one of the youngest rosters, I believe, that was out in Korea at the time as well.
Yeah, at the time they definitely were.
Well, and then I'm sure that at this point, I can't even keep up with all the contenders' actions. So many markets. It's crazy.
Yeah, now there's another one in North America even.
That's what I mean. It's crazy, man. I can't even handle it, man.
But we'll talk more about contenders on Heroes Never Die this week, because there's been a little bit of spice from a certain affiliate team from Boston Uprising who've been calling out an expansion team.
Certain, huh?
Yeah. I mean, they do have Toronto in the name.
Yeah, I mean, they're not really hiding behind anything. Right. Yeah, I'm right there. It's right there in the name.
But anyway, speaking of Boston, guys, we do have a new addition to the Boston Uprising and the aforementioned affiliate team, Toronto Esports. And it's important to note, like, this signing was done before the World Cup. But, like, the player in question here definitely had a standout performance in this year's World Cup for the United Kingdom team, that being Fusion. So, he's coming off of a strong performance there. And Boston Uprising have signed Fusions as a two-way player, which makes him eligible for both the Boston Uprising in the Overwatch League and their affiliate team in Contenders, Toronto Esports. Now, like, this news comes after Toronto Esports recently made some additions to their coaching staff. I know they added former Excel2 Academy coach Io Stux. They also signed Excel to their coaching staff. And, your buddy Huck, he basically just said, like, Fusions will begin the season on Toronto Esports and can be moved up based on his development as a player. Now, when you kind of, like, look at the landscape for Boston right now, this brings him up to 9 players because the two-way player does count for both their Contenders roster as well as their Overwatch League roster. And Fusions is the only two-way player currently on this roster. But when you look at Boston, as of right now, they already have 2 main tanks on their roster. You have Gamzu, who was their main tank in Season 1. They also called up Axiom, who was a main tank on the time from Toronto Esports. So, like, we gave Boston a little bit of flack for their role diversity, I think would be the best way to put it in regards to Season 1, considering that, they had 5 supports for some reason, and we never understood why. I mean, it was kind of like the Shock thing with their hit scan DPS. That was another thing. It's just like, that was a thing. But, like, it's very hard for me right now to be like, well, there's no spot for Fusions on this roster as of right now, because you're not going to want to put yourself in a position where now all of a sudden you have 3 main tanks. Because, like, where exactly would you rotate people in at that point?
I don't really know, like, what the plan is, right? Exactly I mean, the weird move was, in hindsight, calling up Axiom. Like, if that never happens, then we're like, oh, okay, this makes sense. Gamsu probably will focus in on the Winston, and they'll have Fusions to really kind of step in as a Ryan player, depending on the map or the situation. Because now there's some new swap in rules for players between maps. So anyway, I just or is it between rounds now?
It's between maps.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right, hey, keep me on point here. Keep me honest. No, so I just don't exactly know how this is all going to work. I think that ultimately, I think what we need to see is kind of in the fact that he has a two-way contract. Is that maybe they don't have plans right now to put him on the starting lineup, but I don't know, exactly who's going to be left out of the equation, but it's not going to be Gamsu. I don't think he's on the chopping block at all. I feel like he was a consistently good, main tank for Boston last year. So in each stage, Totem.
Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of this is just going to boil down to the camaraderie between the players on Boston Uprising, because in your time away in the Abyss, there were a lot of reports about kind of hostile environments within the organization, which I don't know if you actually read the articles.
I followed the competitive Overwatch subreddit pretty much daily, so okay. I followed a little bit of it.
So if there is a little bit of truth to that I will say it does open up the possibility that maybe Gamsu will get shopped around. But that being said, Boston was also trying to get more money for their players, since they kind of paid them close to bottom dollar in regards to the actual salaries. But, like, at the end of the day, like, as of right now, when you look at Fusions, like, it's very hard to say, like, okay, he had a breakout performance in the World Cup. Let's put him straight to the Overwatch League. That's not really how it works, because, the best thing to compare it to, like, if we're looking at last year's World Cup, was Flower. Flower had a breakout performance. He was part of XL2 Academy, the New York affiliate team. And then he just got completely outplayed on his role by someone that did get called up just after the fact, which I'm definitely going to gripe about here in a minute. But right now, if you're Fusions, playing on Toronto Esports, regardless of whatever, like, fiasco is going on with them, trying to call out Toronto Defiant, This is a good proven ground for him. He did good in the EU with British Hurricane. He did good in the World Cup. Let's see how he adapts to a newer rebuilt roster from Toronto Esports, and then if one of their main tank players on the Overwatch League roster for the Uprising, whether it's Gamzu or Axiom, isn't up to par or up to their standards that they have set in place, then that would be your best bet for Fusions to get the call up. So if anything, if Fusions will play in the Overwatch League, this is going to be a mid-season swap to that role, and then maybe they'll just try to find someone else to take that mantle for Toronto Esports moving forward.
I think that, that may at least makes more sense than what I was picturing. But, I'm excited to kind of see how the drama plays out. At least I think it's a good storyline as we head into season 2. It will be something that we'll be excited to keep an eye on. But I don't know. I'm surprised to hear. I mean, I knew there was drama, but I just feel like the answer to that is not Gamzu leaving. I don't know. I mean, again, I think he's an anchor point on that team, and it's something to build around. But we'll see. And I think Fusions might be a little overhyped. I think he might have gotten a little lucky with some of those Earth Shatters on the World Cup. I don't know. But, I mean, maybe I'm just a USA homer and just an idiot. But I feel like a couple of those plays could have gone either way with the Reinhardt play, and he just came out on top and ended up looking pretty like flawless, but he's not perfect. I think in the Overwatch League, he'll kind of come down to earth a little bit. I think that's a different level of competition in the Overwatch League.
And to your point, too, like when it comes to that triple tank, triple support composition, it's not all set up from one person because there's a lot of synergy that takes place between the Reinhardt and Brigitte, letting that shield bash to lower the Reinhardt shield. Right. Zarya making sure they get the bubble out. So it's not just on one person alone to make that work. So it'll be a curious case. And who knows, like, early word is, like, we're still going to be in GOATs for Season 2, but it's looking like it's going to be more
don't you mean floats?
Yeah, it's more of the dive variation.
Flying goats.
Yeah,
floats.
Flying goats. Yeah, the floats.
I saw it on Reddit. I didn't come up with it. I like it a lot, though.
I'm well aware. But anyways, Fusions was not the only call-up per se, because we do have to take a look at the New York Excelsior. And this is one I'm going to gripe about, because, I'm not...
Listen, have the floor. I have very little to say. Go ahead.
Okay, so... it's worth noting, like, I have no idea whether or not, Spider talked about Flower when he was picked up for NYXL, but this is the second XL2 player to get the call-up to the Excelsior, so following in Flower's footsteps is a man who basically just outshadowed him the entire season at every role, that being Nene. So... if no role changes occur on this roster, New York Excelsior have this predicament where they have 5 DPS players on their roster. Huh. But, just a little bit of
we
background.
call that neck deep where I'm from.
Yeah.
They're neck deep in DPS.
Pretty much. So, Nene, looking back, he began his career in 2017 with Luxury Watch Red. He would later go on to join Lunatic High. This was, like, after... the Seoul Dynasty sign-ins with that team. And he was signed to XL2 Academy at the beginning of 2018, where the team would qualify for the playoffs in both Contenders North America Season 1 and Season 2. Now, XL2 did manage to make it all the way to the Grand Finals this past season, only to get absolutely brickwalled by Fusion University 4-0, and it wasn't even a contest. Like, it might as well have just been a bye week at that point, because, yeah, anything they tried, it did not work. But, like, I know Flower has, the name value, and I'm going to air quote that because of last year's World Cup. But when you look at XL2 Academy's performance last season, whether it was in the regular season or in the playoffs, Flower often was quiet. Like, he wasn't the one getting the fanfare. He wasn't the one being the hard carry. That was always Nene. So for Flower to get the call up first, I mean, it kind of makes sense, but, like, what is New York Excelsior thinking here? Like, are they going to make, like, trades? Like, you figure they have Libero, they have Pine, they have SBB, they have Nene, they have Flower, and a lot of those hero pools overlap pretty significantly.
What you're
And
doing, Totem, is you're using logic. Okay, I'm gonna cut you off here. You're using logic. Okay, what New York what the Excelsior are looking at is the contributions of Flower to the great nation of Korea. Okay, is what they're doing. They're looking at the feelings they felt from the plays he made against the United States on Hanamura. And they're looking at that and they're thinking that they owe him something. So I'm going to use an analogy here for any of our NFL fans. There's this quarterback in the NFL known as Eli Manning who plays for New York as well. He should have been benched 4 years ago, but because of what he's done in the past, he's given a pass and he's allowed to do things that make no sense, and he still plays. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to say, Totem, and actually I'm trying to be, that's an extreme example of it, but in a subtle way, I do believe like his name, to your point, as eye-rolling and talent and all those things as it is, what he had shown in certain moments, for some reason, preceded his reputation in what happened afterwards. Like his reputation has maintained from that. That's why decisions like that get made, because the guy that's helping make that thing happen, the business decision, still remembers the World Cup. He doesn't remember what happened in Contenders. Again, stupid reason. I'm so sorry to cut you off. That was the only thing I could really help contribute. So.
Spider is booing you in the chat, so you're aware.
Why isn't he here then? Why isn't he come here?
He would rather heckle you in chat.
Honestly, I'm glad he's not here. Then there'd be two people really good at this and then me. So.
And that would just put you in a rougher spot overall. But yes, I that was a perfect analogy for sure. But like, it is worth noting, like right now with New York up to 10 players on their roster, right now they only have 2 tanks on their lineup. They have Mono, they have Meko. And it is worth noting that back on his time with Luxury Watch Red, Nene did serve as the off-tank, primarily on Zarya at the time, so, you know, there could be a potential role swap on this team, but at the end of the day, like it kind of bugs me the way that they went about doing it, and maybe like this kind of heralds back to the whole visibility of the Path to Pro scene problem that's going on right now. Because the World Cup gets a lot more viewers than Contenders NA or Contenders Korea, whatever. So a lot more people would be familiar with Flower or Nanohana or whatever iteration of the name that he wants to be, because he's swapped 4 times at this point. So maybe it is a bit of that too as well. But if you're New York, it's just a matter of where are these pieces going to fit into this puzzle? Because the Shock couldn't figure it out all season long. You know, a lot of that was just waiting for some of their key pieces to turn 18. But now you have basically 4 hit scan players on this roster that can all play Widowmaker at a high level in a meta that's really not Widow friendly. So they're just kind of in like this weird position right now. So kind of like,
I'll tell you what they're gonna do. Sorry, I cut you off. No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, when you kind of look at it, like, there are a lot of teams out there that would be more than happy to take one of their flex DPS off their hands, because there are still teams out there that do need, you know, a niche role on their roster, whether it is hit scan or projectile DPS, and with the flexibility of a player like Libero, or, you know, Nene, those players could be a perfect fit for another team. It's just a matter of what the asking price is and whether or not New York is willing to actually let some of their players go, because a lot of this still is consisted of that Luxury Watch core that this team was built around, including, you know, the recent call-ups.
You know, okay, so I had kind of a trolley response, but in all seriousness, I do feel like it's worth New York Excelsior to display some of the talent they have, so be able to rotate in some of the DPS. and let them kind of play with that main roster in order to really just get trade value. To your point, that's the only reason you do that. But I was thinking that a lot of what teams could do, this is something we had kind of like, I think, hypothesized early on about Boston Uprising when we saw all those supports on the roster. But maybe there's going to be opportunity for DPS specialties. So instead of a player really like, being focused on hit scan in general, becoming like more focused on McCree. So on certain, capture point maps, that's when a McCree is going to be, they're going to play that whole map. Or on certain defensive maps or certain maps where there's going to be like a little bit more narrow pathways, having that widow specialist that's only going to be able to, pick off the people flank. I'm just trying to think of like, do you put each DPS player into a different specific hero, right? I'm trying to put too many connections together to a map and a character right now, but it's more important of taking each of those DPS players and then finding more specialties within the role of DPS outside of just hit scan and projectile, like having a bit more of a, and that is where I feel like you probably need to make more swaps. Like if you look at it strategically, you pretty much are going to use, I think Mono and Meko, a great example of just, you're fine. You really don't need any more tanks on that roster necessarily. You have a good duo, you have a good core, and the same thing with supports. You don't need a lot of swapping, it seems. I think we're going to see as the support roster grows in Overwatch, that will change. So I guess, again, what I'm getting at is you want to keep that core, the tanks and the supports in the whole time, and then you're really just swapping DPS out depending on the map and the situation. So I wonder if New York is kind of playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers, and Ash is coming out. So there's going to be different kind of skill sets and mechanics that are blended between McCree and Widow there. So I feel like you might have a spot for a McCree player, a Widow player, an Ash player, and then it just comes down to map and matchup. Again, maybe I'm giving them too much credit, and they're just trying to get some good trade value out of these people. We'll see.
So what you're saying is you were expecting a quad sniper. Like
not at the same time, but I mean, yeah, I feel like I'm thinking there could be some opportunity for they really feel like they're making McCree close to mid, Ash mid to long, and Widow long to longer, whatever that means. So there's going to be different skill sets, I think, that the players can focus on maybe, but it's Overwatch. Those things change depending on the map. Different portions of Hollywood, you need different hit scans. So I think I'm kind of talking myself out of my idea here. I'm just trying to think of another layer here, Totem.
I do know that Nene played a pretty mean Sombra in Contenders, and we've seen quite a bit of Sombra.
That's important. You need a Sombra. Yeah.
So it's just a matter of, where the meta is taking us. But for now, New York, in regards to DPS flexibility, they have a lot, but there is a lot of overlap. So it's just a matter of defining who is going to be playing what, whether it is hero specific, whether it is, general role like Hitscan or Tracer, which isn't really a thing anymore. But yeah, it'll be interesting. But for the most part, even if Mono goes down or if Meko goes down, they'll have a backup in Nene. And if they, somehow lose his support, they could always have Mono, play Lucio again, like he did in preseason. They're able to cover their fronts right now, but it's just a lot of firepower on one particular line, and, it just kind of makes you wonder exactly, who's going to be seeing the bulk of the playtime when a lot of them are known for having flexible hero pools. So it'll be an interesting case to kind of study as we get closer into the season and as the season goes on. But moving on, we do have an event that is coming up, and that is going to be held on December 1st by the Philadelphia Fusion as they are hosting a homecoming event. So this will be at the Lucky Strike Philadelphia, and it'll feature a show match against one of the league's, and I quote, top teams. Now, I know their Twitter has been, kind of, egging on, or just being oh, no, we're not facing Dallas, dumpster fires aren't legal, or whatever the hell they did. But they do have tickets for this event up on their website. General admission tickets are $25. You can get VIP tickets for $100. And with the VIP tickets, that includes a pre-party before the Nerd Street Gamers meet and greet. And, you can also get some unreleased Fusion merchandise before it becomes available to the general public. Now, that being said, I haven't really been paying attention to all of the tweets per se, as in regards to, like, what team is not going to be facing the Fusion. But is there any team in particular that you feel like would be the best fit for a show match? Considering that, right now we've already seen, London and Houston. We just had the culmination of the California Cup between the Valiant and the Shock, and, they kind of split that series. Is there a team out there that you would really want to see the Fusion, practice against in the offseason?
I mean, it's kind of a stretch for me. It's kind of a reach, but just because it's kind of one of the new brands and it's not terribly far away, I was thinking maybe the Toronto Defiant. I would like to see those skins in game.
So what you're saying is because they keep a duck in Toronto Esports, they don't want to stoop to their level, right? So, they're like, okay, we can't do Overwatch League versus, an affiliate team. But what we can do
is play
is
your
Overwatch
parent
League
company.
versus Overwatch League.
That's what we can do. I like it.
Well, for me, like, I think the obvious choice would be New York, out of all of the teams. I know Boston was a team that was ruled out already, and that would have been, like, probably the next best guess. But, like, for me, like, I just am so curious to see what this new look offense is going to be from New York, that they would be my first choice. But, there's also another team out there that, we haven't really heard anything about, right? Like, we've heard the rumor mill, like, and there hasn't been any sort of, like, logo leak or anything like that, and it's been all quiet on the Vancouver front. But, like, I would love Vancouver to be the team to take this fight to Philadelphia as kind of, like, our first look. But, like, I feel like that's too much of a stretch. But I feel like at the end of the day, New York is going to be the safest bet. So I'm not expecting it to be an expansion team, especially with how they classified it as a top team. But again, like, that could mean just about anything, except Shanghai.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I was trying to kind of stretching it a little bit with that, but I was thinking maybe the top team, and that's why I think Toronto might be a play. It's technically within, like, kind of that division. Is kind of the top of the map, the highest north. What do you think, Totem?
I see where you're going. It is still relatively close. But, like, if you're Toronto, here's the thing. Like, for one, I'm pretty sure December 1st is, like, that cutoff point where all teams need to have 8 players on their roster. It would line up perfectly, like, even for an expansion team. Like, they would have a full roster to actually work with by this point in time. Yes, Ed. Ha ha ha. Very funny. But anyways, like I feel like Toronto, like, if we are going the expansion team route, is the closest one to them. So, we'll have to wait and see. But for now, we'll have fun kind of seeing them poke around, and kind of, making fun of the other teams that they aren't playing. But for now, we'll just have to wait and see. I'm hoping for New York, but I would not be upset if it is an expansion team nonetheless. But guys, we have to talk about, some things that have been going down with the expansion teams in particular. We got a little bit of news outside of Atlanta. We got a couple of expansion team brand reveals, and they were kind of leaked ahead of time, and we're still waiting on the official reveals for a couple of them. But, there were a couple reveals that we will talk about that. But anyways, let's move into our main discussion. So first up, Slambo, let's talk about Atlanta. Now, you just got back from Atlanta. Like, literally not that long ago. And it's been kind of a crazy week for Atlanta, right? So, DeFran basically has, like, this huge meltdown on stream, And he basically sends out this ominous tweet, right? And I will read the tweet. He says, "The end. I hate the game. Thought I could love it again and have passion, but it's impossible. I always end up soft throwing. Contract ended. Overwatch uninstalled. McDonald's, here I come." Now, during said stream, he did in fact uninstall Overwatch. So, that's out there. But this tweet basically came like a week and a half after DeFran was signed to the Atlanta Reign franchise. And then, a couple days pass, and Atlanta, they don't make any sort of like statement about what had gone down. But it's important to note, as an Atlanta fan, DeFran is still with the team. And, DeFran basically said, sometimes I just have these days and I make dumb mistakes, and he plans on streaming less and focusing on making himself and his team better. Now, when we kind of like look back at the past with DeFran, you can definitely make some comparisons to, some other popular streamers turned like pro Overwatch League players. And it's high risk, high reward for a player like DeFran. You know that he has this mentality when he does stream the game where he has been known to throw, whether it's soft throwing or hard throwing, playing Torbjorn, whatever. He has these moments, so you need to pull him in somehow. And it kind of goes back to like some conversations that we had where you have a lot of these players in the Overwatch League that are really young, and they've been kind of known to do this. Like, they don't really know how to conduct themselves in that professional type environment. So, hopefully Atlanta's management team can, just pull them aside, maybe just send, like, sit him down, give him a stern talking to, and say, like, hey, like, you are obligated to play for this team. You're going to be making good money, a lot more than what you would be making, at McDonald's, nonetheless. But it seems like every year there's just one particular person that kind of like falls into this category. Like, DeFran has a huge fan base, and if DeFran were to not compete in, Season 2 of the Overwatch League, I feel like that would take a lot of the interest out of Atlanta, because he's kind of like their pull, basically. Like, everyone heard DeFran was signed, and then Twitter and like competitive Overwatch Reddit basically just blew up like overnight. Basically, like, there were a lot of rumors going around like, hey, DeFran is actually in talks, so this could be a thing that happens. And then it was confirmed, and they did the whole kind of like debate with the like really old picture of DeFran at the time with the unveiling. But, like, if you're Atlanta, you need DeFran on that team, because he's the one that is bringing in the eyes. He's bringing in the viewership. He'll be shilling all the merchandise on the stream whenever he does stream. Like, he's as of right now, their star player, even though he hasn't played a game yet with Atlanta, obviously. But you need to just keep him on the path and not have him verge off too much, because he is a liability, regardless of how talented of a player he actually is.
I mean, it's definitely the seal to the Dallas Fuel last season. I feel like even when Siegel wasn't in, he made Dallas Fuel a more valuable franchise, definitely from a merchandise and fan support stand. And I think you made that point to what DeFran can bring. I completely fundamentally disagree with everything that he did.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand how he let himself break that far from what he was supposed to be doing, to uninstalling on the stream, to kind of making the statement that he was done, then to coming back and making a short, quick apology tweet and just kind of almost sweeping it under the rug. I just don't like how it was handled, really, to be honest with you. I feel like you're right. Someone basically sat him down and was like, listen, kid, you're under contract now. You signed on this dotted line a few weeks ago. You're definitely going to need to go ahead and press that install button right away for me. And next time you have a meltdown, what I want you to do is go to this OBS right here. I want you to click the stop streaming button and I want you to call me, okay? And we're gonna get the team psychiatrist over here. And I mean, I'm trying to bring some light to it, but ultimately, the Atlanta Reign will give him the support he needs to kind of get sorted out through some of those issues. But he's got to figure out quickly how to grow up and fit into this professional environment. That's kind of one of the first things you said. We're in the big leagues now. Like, you're playing in the pro leagues. This is a right, not, or this is a privilege, not a right. Forgive me, I said that backwards, right? This is a privilege to be here, and you're setting an example for future generations of gamers. So I understand the high expectations of him from their organization. They have a lot of money invested probably in him, and there's a lot riding on it. But I just feel I feel very surprised that this all happened so quickly too. Like, it just seemed very odd. But I'm gonna sound like a sucker here, Totem. I'm very excited for the first Atlanta Reign game in case he plays. I just want to see how he performs in that environment. That's all. You know, we've seen him on stream. We've seen him dip his toe into some competitive every once in a while. But he kind of has it. Just, you're right. It was a landmark signing. We were excited to have him, but I really want to see how he performs. If he does really well, I'm excited and I'm stoked. If he does very poorly, I'm also very stoked to pour the gasoline on. I don't know. He's a weird personality. I've called him to French fries for a long time, but he's still, I won't call him that anymore until he's out of the league and he's back to the French fries.
Okay, so basically, like, right now, I'm painting this picture of just, like, you have, like, a matchbook in one hand, and then, like, a can of gasoline in the other, and you're just ready for whatever it's going to be.
As soon as he shows one moment of weakness, we will destroy him. And if he does well, it's like, cool, he's on Atlanta. I'm cheering for Atlanta. I hope well for them.
I just found it very peculiar, though, right? Like, this happens, and then, you know, Cox Enterprises, you know, they just fly you out to Atlanta, right?
Yeah, nah, man.
To calm down a situation.
I'm a peer mediator, Totem. That's what I do. I mediate situations. So I'm a professional mediator.
Yeah.
No, I'm not at all. That's not what I do. And no, I did not go for anything related to the Atlanta Reign, I promise.
Uh-huh. I don't know if all of her listeners will believe that, but anyways,
you
guys.
know what? You don't have to believe it. It's the truth.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had a text from my wife. I looked down. We're good. I'm good.
But moving on, guys, we have not one, not two, but three expansion franchise reveals here in this past week. And let's talk about the one that we know the most about, that being Paris. So we already talked about the Paris roster. You know, they got the Soon, they got the Shadowburn, or Soonburn, or Shadoon. I don't know, like
whatever the combination of Soon and
combination is going to be. Like, it's going to be spicy. But anyways, Paris is going to be known as Paris Eternal.
Boy.
So, Paris is the third Overwatch League expansion team to announce its branding, and their color scheme consists of gold, blue, burgundy, and white. Now, the logo is a burgundy-colored rooster, which is France's national symbol. Nice. And also incorporated in the shape of the rooster's body is the infinity symbol. Now, they did have a live reveal event that was held, that was open to the public. I know it had, you know, the Overwatch League commissioner, Nate Nancer, there. They also had the roster there, that was announced here in the last month. And Nancer did confirm, you know, just bring this up again, that in this upcoming season, the Overwatch League will extend its schedule to Sunday. So it does seem like Thursday through Sunday is going to be the new norm in regards to the Overwatch League. So the people that were there had the chance to play against the Eternal team in show matches, and, like, I have to say, like, you know, Ednar and I, we had something set in mind for the branding. he said I couldn't have the Paris baguettes because of Brigitte, so I'm like,
Yep.
fine, we're not gonna do that. We'll have the Paris berets, and we'll go from there.
Mhm.
And then we get a rooster, and I was just, I was let down, Slambo. Like I didn't know what to think, but I want to get your thoughts on the name. The overall color scheme, which is honestly like pretty different in regards to the actual
Mhm.
colors compared to
Mhm.
the normal stuff. What did you think of the franchise reveal for Paris?
I don't want to be disrespectful. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to look at it from Paris' perspective, and that is this is the symbol of their city. This is a very proud moment for people from that region, I believe. Okay, I was respectful. Now what I really say is, what the hell is this? What are we talking about? A chicken? We put a chicken up on the
Mhm.
freaking as a logo? A freaking rooster? This looks silly. This looks out of place. This looks like a meme and it looks too simple. All right. Color scheme's cool though. I'm fine with the blue and the gold and the red. It's fine. That looks good, but just the whole vibe and look of it is kind of off to me. And by the way, one thing I need to call you out on, you named off all these amazing players on the roster. You forgot Cruz, the best Lucio player in the
That's
world.
because
Okay?
every time I've talked about Cruz, like I keep saying the same thing. He's the bodyguard Lucio.
He literally
if
is
you
the
if
best.
you if you need a boop, if you need protection, you just go to Cruz, and he'll create that separation. You don't need your tank
Dude,
line; just go to Cruz. It's fine.
Cruz is the bruise. Let's go. All right, moving on. Anyway,
Abs-
no, I'm disappointed, Totem. Sorry, I didn't mean to leave air there, but it is just a weird one to me. I don't like it,
Mhm.
but I do like that roster, and it's definitely a team I want to keep my eye on. I like that roster. They won't do well. They'll be bottom 5, but don't. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. See. So like, as I was like basically like messing around in Photoshop, and like kind of going back to what Ed and I were talking about. I was like, you know what, like. Here's my iteration of the logo, right? So I don't know if you have your Twitch stream up, and if you guys are listening to video audio, I'm gonna put this up. So we had, right? So I added a beret, and I was like, you know what? This just isn't French enough. Like, how can we move to that next step, right? So I'm like, okay, well, like we can't just do that, right? So then you add the baguette, and then bam, everything fits together.
Damn,
That's what we need to do. Like that was perfect.
c'est moi, oui.
Like that to me looks a lot better. I mean, I'm just saying, like you kind of need those other things, because like if you talk to a general person who isn't from France or Paris or Europe really, or anywhere even near the vicinity, like. When they think of Paris, they're not gonna think of a rooster, right? That's not gonna be the first thing that comes to mind, or like the infinity sign. Like, you're gonna think of one, like cigarettes, baguettes, French berets, maybe some art. But like rooster would probably be like the
very
furthest
messed up
thing from their minds. So yeah, that was
Wow. You are a master of Photoshop and
my
art,
very
sir.
basic Photoshop skills.
But the baguette is just perfectly placed in the right color. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
But anyways, I did not do that for the other brand reveals. That was specifically for Paris because like it just didn't do it for me. Like I like the name, but I don't know. I'm not feeling the rooster, but it is gonna bring a lot of more like offensive memes. And so is one of the other ones that hasn't been officially announced yet, which I'll have a more not safe for work discussion on H&D whenever that we talk about the other franchises, because yeah, there's some interesting things about the Hanzo symbol. So I'll just leave it at that for now. But anyways, speaking of the Chinese teams, we do have, speaking of the Abyss, the team that sent out that very ominous, like, storm tweet not too long ago, that being from Guangzhou. And that franchise will be known as the Guangzhou Charge. Now, Charge are the first of 3 Chinese Overwatch League expansion teams to reveal their branding. We did have another Chinese brand that was unveiled, which we'll talk about here in a minute. And as of right now, in regards to the Charge roster, the only known member we have is Hotba, who was traded from the Philadelphia Fusion roster here this past month. Now, Guangzhou basically took inspiration from iconic sports logos where letters have grown to represent an entire city. So, they got the G, they got the Z. And, of course, with Charge, they dealt with electricity and lightning, so that's worked into the text. It's all kind of basic. Like, it's okay. Like, I wasn't, like, blown away by it by any means, but what I do love is the color scheme for this team, because it's basically like they got like a dark blue, kind of like a sea blue, and like a teal. Like, it's blue on blue, and it looks pretty nice overall. And out of all of the current expansion teams that are known color scheme wise, this one's actually my favorite out of the lot. So when it comes to actually like buying skins, this would be one that I'm definitely going to be leaning towards in regards to spending some of my Overwatch League tokens. So all in all, like, the logo, like, to me, like, I understand where they're coming from. Like, it's just okay. But the skin colors is really what makes it for me, and it does stand out against the field so far.
No, definitely. I can't like agree more perfectly with all your opinions. Like, I feel like the logo's a bit underwhelming, but I like it. It's not exactly what I thought, but I'm fine with it. The name is good. It's a good name. I feel like it belongs. The color scheme is by far the best of any expansion rosters. I was so glad to hear you say that. But Totem, this is a team I'm going to hate for the rest of my life.
Oh yeah,
because I am a Kansas City Chiefs fan, and one of our rivals is the Chargers. And as far as I'm concerned, this is as close to Chargers as you're going to get without being Chargers. Mm-hmm. So I will forever root against this team. As far as I'm concerned, the entire roster is all played by the quarterback of the Los Angeles Chargers, Phillip Rivers, who probably most people don't even care about. But just so you guys know, I'm going to refer to him for the rest of the season. Anytime there's a mistake, I'm going to blame Phillip Rivers for the Guangzhou Charge problems. Just laying it out there, Totem. In all seriousness, everything else but the last thing I said applies.
All right. Well, speaking of Chinese teams, we also had Chengdu announce their branding, and like, I like the okay, we're gonna send out a tweet and then delete it immediately, and then Overwatch League's gonna send out a tweet and then delete it immediately because they beat like the actual team Twitter account by like 40 seconds, so then they had to repost it again. So it was a lot of like, okay, we're gonna unveil, okay, no, we take it back, okay, we're gonna unveil, okay, no. Okay, this time it's for real. Like, this is the team. So Chengdu is the Chengdu Hunters, and they have a hashtag, Let's Go Hunt. I like the hashtag. The whole Panda Hunters doesn't really make that much sense, per se. But, the color scheme is kind of interesting because, it has gold, it has orange, black and white, and we've seen like an actual panda logo like on a white background, and then it did one like with more of a gold background, and obviously China, they have the panda logo, which is one of the national symbols, and it's also seen as a symbol of peace, but like they have the Let's Go Hunt motto. That doesn't really work. Like, I feel like there's a clash of styles going on here between what the hashtag for it is, what the logo is, and what the actual brand in itself is. So I'm feeling a little bit conflicted, but a lot of people like pandas, So I can't say that I'm like overly surprised by the fact that they went with a panda face. Now, granted, it is. I'm not gonna say like it's super menacing, but he does have a little bit of attitude towards him in regards to like his facial expression, especially with his eyes.
Yeah, it's weird they chose like an herbivore as a hunter. That is strange. But I think we have to understand what it represents to China. So we have to kind of respect that the panda is like the symbol of like courage and pride. And, so I think that's where it comes from. But Totem, this team's ruined for me. Ruined. Okay.
Okay.
So what you have to understand about being a parent is that sometimes you have to listen to these ridiculous songs on loop that you never would listen to. And there's this one, and it's called Baby Shark. And there's some people out there that got kids that but I'm just saying because you
I
got
mean,
nieces and nephews.
we had to listen to it not too
You had to
long
listen
ago.
to it. Live mariachi version. You had to listen to that song. Told them there's some lyrics in there where they say, "Let's go hunt." Do 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 do. So every time I read "Let's go hunt," I hear that verse of Baby Shark. It is ruined for me. So as much as I like the color scheme, I love the name. I don't see the connection to the logo, but I like the logo, and I really like kind of the contrast it brings to that division color wise. Other than that, let's go hunt. Do is going to be in my head every time we talk about this team.
Now it's gonna be stuck with me too. Now you have it ingrained.
You see? Do you
in
understand my
mind.
struggle there? And there's people listening to this show that are going to go, God damn, they're going to be so mad at me because I brought it up because it's going to be in their head now.
He's back for one show, and then he drops this on us.
It's gonna come, Totem. I feel bad already, but I said everything else I said about the branding. I do like this a lot, and I like the way the uniforms look in game. It looks solid.
So, as of right now, like, we don't know any roster sign-ins for the Hunters, but what we do know is that they have partnered with RNG. Not Renegades, okay? That's worth noting, but Royal never give up, and they will serve as a consultant on operating this team. And RNG is a renowned Chinese esports club. They have a lot of history in other games, so, they'll be kind of, like, helping, kind of, like, lead the way, kind of like what, I think it was Sentinel that did it for the LA Gladiators this past season. And Ed got deranked. Haha, that's what you get, Ed. But anyways, like, looking back at, like, the in-game skins, like, my first thought was, like, it's like, man, that's a lot of yellow. So, like, obviously the first thing that came to mind is, like, okay, well, like, this is going to be, like, the Overwatch League version of Bumblebees, essentially, because it's kind of like replace like the banana Reinhardt with a mayhem type skin.
Yeah.
But it's not bad. But at the end of the day, like when you think of the panda, like outside of whatever song that you were gonna have stuck in your head because of the hashtag, like I feel like merchandise wise, that definitely opens up a lot more possibilities with the ways that they can go about designs and stuff, or plushes, toys, things like that, more so with Chengdu compared to the other Overwatch League franchises, just because it is more universal, so to speak, in regards to just an icon or a logo or a mascot, whatever. So I'm curious to see what exactly their direction is going to be with their merchandise aspect of that panda. But at the end of the day, like, we still don't know too much about this team. It's probably, was this one of the Korean teams? I'm trying to honestly remember. I'll have to look at the rumored sign-ins to see.
If you're gonna rely on me for that, you messed up a long time ago.
Okay,
right?
so
No.
the only other thing that I have of note is Silk Thread. Very recently, it might have been yesterday. He basically tweeted an image of like a panda plush, and I know Silk Thread is rumored to be on this lineup, and this is one of the mixed rosters, it looks like. but yeah, we kind of like went over this in one of our prior episodes. So if you go back and you listen to, oh man, see, this is gonna throw me off because we did like a couple of unofficial episodes, which were specials, and not actually like Overwatch League Network specific podcasts.
Right.
But we
Right.
basically split up the expansion teams based on the division. So we had one that was for the Atlantic expansion teams, one for the Pacific division teams,
Right.
where we went on to talk about the rumored rosters, which some of which have come to fruition. But just looking at a couple of the names on here, I see Beast Halo on the tank lineup, who was the main tank for Fusion University, Late Yun. Silk Thread's on here. Bacon Jack, who I was a pretty big fan of, out of
German tank player, right?
Well, Bacon Jack was a Tracer player out of Australia.
Wait, who am I thinking about? I'll look it up. No, I'm making a mistake.
now it's just gonna bug you.
No, I'm not. No, it's gonna bug me. Who I'm
I don't know who you're thinking of. But anyways, so that's 3 expansion teams, and what's interesting is like usually we're like used to like these announcements coming in pairs, right? So like we're still waiting on a couple other franchises, like Washington D.C. still hasn't announced anything, but again, like if you've been following the Reddit or if you've been on .esports Overwatch. You've probably seen a lot of the logos that were leaked on the mobile app ahead of time, so you kind of have an idea of what to expect from the franchises and their names outside of Vancouver, because Vancouver, for whatever reason, has been the only one to kind of keep everything in wraps, basically. Like, no one knows what, like, the franchise is, or their logo, or what their color scheme is going to be. But what we do know is, like, it'll hopefully be pink or blue, right? Like we're hoping, Okay, it's Skipjack is who you're thinking of, as I see your message.
It's one of the Jacks.
You were close.
Not close enough. I'm getting there.
But
Sorry
anyways, like we're more than likely going to have some more expansion team news going into the next week. And in regards to like esports events that are going on right now, it's been pretty quiet. Contenders should be starting up here pretty soon. We have the Angry Cup going on, which is being hosted by Angry Titans. I believe they rescheduled the finals for that for Wednesday. So you have Angry Titans going up against Samsung Morning Stars. So that might be something to check out on Wednesday if you guys are interested in that. To see... I'm trying to remember who's on this roster. I know Leaf is on there. He was on Gamers Origin in the past. They also have... I'm trying to remember how to pronounce this guy's name. Like, I'm probably going to butcher it. Mazausa is a pretty good tank player.
Mausaza?
Something like that. But for now...
Mowsaza. Anyway, whatever.
Yeah, it's a lot of letters just mixed together, but... No, it's going to be a steady flow of news over the next couple of weeks, especially once, we get into the holidays. So in regards to, like, podcast scheduling, if we have any, like, issues with that, we'll definitely let you guys know. But for now, we're going to close out the show. So if you guys want to help us out, one of the best ways to do that is to leave us a positive review over on iTunes. We're always looking for feedback or constructive criticism to, just offer us some insight on how we can improve the show. We do have Overwatch Recall, which is our podcast directory for Overwatch content, whether it's Overwatch, Overwatch League, or Path to Pro podcast. You can find that on our website. And then every Sunday night, we do episodic listens of all the content that was released by the podcast out there. So you can follow that on Twitter at OW Recall. And we should be back in podcast form pretty soon, so stay tuned for that. But Slambo, it's been a while. There's been some changes to some of the social media since you've last been here, so why don't you go ahead and let our viewers and listeners know where they can find us.
Let's see if I can handle this, Totem. All right, you can toss us an email, contact@owlnshow.com. Hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at @OWLNshow. Our website, www.owlnshow.com. We're on youtube.com/c/Overwatch League Network. Discord at discord.me/OWLN show. And lastly, you can see us live here on Twitch, twitch.tv/OWLN show. We are a Twitch affiliate, so make sure you guys give us that additional support by hitting that subscribe button on our channel. And doing so, we'll give you guys our awesome Overwatch League Network emoticon. Also, our shows are live weekly, Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific for Overwatch League Network. The show you're watching now. It will be better next time. I'll get better. Heroes Never Die, taking place on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. That's our variety Overwatch show. And also our hosts do try to stream on Thursdays and Fridays at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. Totem, what about you on them social meteors?
Well, you can find myself over on Twitter at TotallyDrunkCTR, and if I'm streaming, which is 2-3 nights a week, it will of course be on our podcast network channel, here on Twitch and twitch.tv/OWLN show. Spider isn't here, but we gotta plug his stuff anyway. I mean, he does a lot of work for us, and he kind of took the helm this past week, which I was happy to see. But you can find Spider on Twitter at SpiderGD, and I know he has a Twitch, which is also at twitch.tv/SpiderGD, but usually he'll be here as well. But Slambo, it's been, I don't even know how long it's been. It's been some time, so mayhaps some of our listeners forgot where they can reach you at. So where can they find you over on the Twitter sphere?
For sure, don't waste your time on my Twitch page. But certainly check me out on Twitter at SlamOverwatch, and I will follow you back, and I'll hit you with some love. That's the best I can do. But I'm gonna, who knows? Maybe some streams will be coming up in my future. It's getting easier to be a parent. Mila's getting a little older, so certainly I'm hoping to find some more windows to be playing games and get a little better Overwatch, because I'm starting to kind of stink a little bit. I'm not very good.
You're feeling the literal decay. Both SR and
just
just
a little
skill
more than
wise.
that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I know the feeling. But anyways, guys, that is going to do it for us here tonight on Overwatch League Network. Again, this has been episode number 56. I am Totally Drunk, joined once again by my soulmate Slambo, and we will see you back on Wednesday night at 5 p.m. Pacific time for the next episode of Heroes Never Die. But for now, guys, we will see you next time. Have a good night.
Thank you for listening to the Overwatch League Network. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter at OWLN Show. The theme music for OWLN is the main theme and victory theme guitar remix by Michael Mack.